this is Sue for my journey with Parkinson's, and I'd like to talk about peer support and the importance of peer support. And I really do believe that it is important that we have the support of our peers as well as from any partners or family members that may be on this journey with us. So I was diagnosed on the 15th of December 2020, so this year it'll be 6 years since I was diagnosed. So that's a reasonable long time in terms of Parkinson's progression, etc. But there are some subtle changes that I'm noticing, but nothing huge. I can still manage myself mostly reasonably independently. So I've always been a believer in peer support, whatever that is for. I know when I had my first child, my oldest son Adam, and I was a young mum, I was only 20 when I had him, and I used to go to a play group with some of the ladies that I met through his preschool, and we'd go around each other's places and we'd chat and we'd have coffee and get to know each other, and our kids could play together. And it was great to see, I was the youngest one there, and it was great to see even women that were like maybe 10 years older than me perhaps, or 10 years older than me, still had doubts and queries and fears and concerns about how they were performing as a mother and whether they were doing the right thing for their children. So it was really heartening to be in that group of people who were, on the surface of it, in the same boat, all learning to be mums and fumbling their way through. And we sort of swapped hints and tips of things that worked or didn't work, recipes for homemade rusks, recipes for banana cake, recipes for anything, and toys that we found that were really good for our children, just little bits and pieces. We built on each other's knowledge and were there and supporting each other through the journey into the unknown territory of being a mum. So from there, I realised that for anything that you do, there's nothing quite like getting together with a bunch of other people who are doing the same sort of thing, and you can bounce off each other and learn from each other and support each other as you go through whatever you go through. So the same is true of having Parkinson's. Parkinson's is a condition that has so many different symptoms that some of us have quite a few symptoms. Some of the people have got tremors, others don't. Some have memory issues, which I very much do. And we can sit and we can talk about what those things are, how they affect us, and swap some ideas on how to cope. At last night's peer support group meeting, we talked about a whole lot of things, and it was quite funny. I was saying to one of the newer ones that I was chatting to, I said, sometimes I think people have come along and they haven't come back again. I wonder whether they think that the group just chats about nothing and we don't even mention Parkinson's, and sometimes we don't. As I was saying this, I could hear my husband saying, and if you want good fish and chips, you need to go to and he named a fish and chip shop in our favourite place to go when we want a few days off, and that is in Kaikoura. So yeah, he was talking about fish and chips and I was talking about Parkinson's related stuff. And there'll be conversations about the rugby, about the cricket, about the Olympics. There's all sorts of different conversations. And I said to this lady I was chatting to, maybe some of the new people come along and they think, oh, what's the use of this group? They're just sitting here and gossiping and talking about unimportant things. There's nothing much happening in relation to Parkinson's. And that is very much a valid view. It is often very little to do with Parkinson's. But because of the nature of a support group, where you have a condition or something happening in your life that is having a severe impact on your life and will do for the duration, it takes a lot of courage to sort of say when you're not coping, to talk about how things are maybe not going so well. And you're less likely to do that with a group of people that you don't know, that you're not comfortable with, than you are if you have built relationships. So to me, the peer support group that we have, we've been meeting for quite some time now, and we know each other well enough, I think, to sort of ask the gnarly questions and be involved in the conversation about things that we're finding tough. So, and that's what we do. And so we covered quite a lot of ground yesterday when I was talking to this lady, and she has a young child, And I was saying to her, has your daughter's school been advised of what's been happening for her dad about the diagnosis? And she said, no, I didn't really think of it. And that happened a lot when I was working as a social worker in the hospital. And somebody would come onto the ward with a stroke, which was predominantly what we were doing. They would come on the ward having had a stroke, and they'd have young children. And I'd say to them, have you said anything to your children's school? And they said, why? I said, well, just in case your child needs someone to talk to. And often people would say, no, because we're very close and we know that she would come and talk to us if she had anything on her mind and she needed to talk things through. Because we have that closeness, we're confident that she will do that. And I used to say, yeah, you may have a point, but looking at it another way, if you're very close and your children obviously care about you, and they know something big has happened in Mum and Dad's life, particularly in Dad's if he's the one that's had the stroke. They know it's upsetting, whatever has happened to Dad, and so therefore they may not want to talk to you because they do not want to add to that upset. They don't want to make Mum cry by asking, hey, what's happened to Dad? And so they therefore might just bottle things up and then not know what to do with those feelings. So I've always recommended that people contact the school and just say, hey, this is what's happening in our lives. Can you just keep a gentle eye on my child? And if she looks sad or if she's behaving differently and out of character, it might be because she's dealing with all these big feelings and big thoughts and stuff that she doesn't quite know what to do with, and she may need somebody to support her. And the mother that I was talking to about this, gosh, I never really thought about it. We think about issues at school bullying or learning problems or those sorts of things and readily seek help for that sort of thing. But they haven't really thought about any support for her through the school for what she's going through with her dad. And she is going through it. Even if you don't talk to your child much about it, they're aware of the change in dynamics. They're aware that Dad's a little bit different, doing different things, maybe noticing a tremor, maybe getting more tired and not sort of wanting to play so much. And so the children have an emotional connection to the person with Parkinson's and an independent opportunity to have somebody to talk to about whatever is troubling them. So she said, well, yeah, I hadn't thought of it, but maybe it's a good idea. So that was a good little conversation to come out of that peer group. We talked about travel, myself and my husband and a few others who've been over the UK recently, and we talked about the things that we did, the adjustments that we had to make to our travel plans or to the way we travelled, the amount that we did while we were away, those sorts of things. And so we swapped some ideas and thoughts on that, and that was really useful because a lot of the people in our group do like to travel, and the time to do that travel is now. So, yeah, so we had a bit of a chat about that. And we also talked about a couple of things like the next step and the value sometimes that can be had from somebody going into residential care. Now that may sound strange to say the value that can be found, but I know when I had patients that were getting to the stage where they weren't really safe or as safe as they could be at home. And so if the person with Parkinson's wasn't safe, then the people living with them also weren't safe. And so talked about how particularly she had an elderly father that she was supporting, and when a person is in their home that they've been in for many years and it's got a heap of sentimental attachment in there and they really don't want to leave that environment and go into residential care, but at some point most of us will end up needing to do so. And one thing I said, if you're the daughter or the wife or the husband of somebody with a condition that you're having to do the hard yards, maybe helping them to shower and dress and toilet and help feed them and all those sorts of things, you become more of a carer than a wife or a husband or a daughter or son. You lose that sort of familial bond and you have that connection as a carer, and it changes the dynamic between you. And so what I often used to say was, if you have that person go into residential care because they need it for their safety and their health requirements, then you have people that can do the hard yards going into residential care. And so we had a conversation and I said, I'm telling you now that if this has to happen, then it's okay. We need to be safe, both of us. And if I need to go into residential care, or if he needs to go into residential care, who knows, then it needs to happen for both of us to be safe, and it's okay. And so if it has to happen, it's okay. It's not going to be too big a problem. And then I said in the next breath, but at the time when it's about to happen, I'll probably object. So just cast your mind back to this conversation when I said, yeah, it'll be okay. So yeah, we had a bit of a chat about having that conversation early on in the piece, probably far sooner than you absolutely have to, but if you can get that out of the way, then you've had the conversation and you can put that to bed for now. It's like I used to liken it to taking out life insurance. Now, you're taking out life insurance, and the reason for life insurance, obviously, is for some money to come to your family once you're no longer here, once you have died. And so it's not that great sitting there talking about, oh, when I die, how much money is going to be available to my family. But it's the adult, the sensible thing to do. And so you take out life insurance, and when you take out your life insurance, you often get the policy document and you tuck it away somewhere safe, and you go, I can ignore that now. I'm not going to be thinking about when I die. I can ignore that knowing that it's there. And it's the same with this conversation regarding residential care. You can have the conversation, you can agree on it, you can acknowledge that you've had the conversation, and then you can just put that to bed and not talk about it for years and years and years. It's just somewhere there when you need to pick it up and talk about it again. So yeah, that's the sort of highlights from the peer support group yesterday. We did talk a little bit about getting a diagnosis and how hard that can be. I was lucky. I pushed for mine to be assessed by a neurologist very early in the piece because my mum and dad had both had Parkinson's. So I had a heightened sense of awareness of symptoms, and I was right on the money when I went to be diagnosed. Did a few very simple tests and said, yes, I had Parkinson's. So there you go. One of those occasions where you just do not want to be right, but I was. So yeah, I recommend a peer support group, even if it's not through your local agency if you have one. But along the way you might meet other people with Parkinson's, and it might be there's just two of you, and you meet once a month for a coffee and a catch up with somebody that gets what you're going through. But yeah, having somebody support you, often outside the family too. My husband is an amazing support, but he doesn't need to be my everything. It's not good for him to be my everything. So having friends and other people that I can talk to is certainly helpful for both of us. So yeah, that's a wee bit about the peer support group yesterday. It was well worth going to, and we had a few laughs. We found out where to get the best fish and chips. We got some travel tips and had a bit of a chat about residential care, so we covered a few things. So this has been Sue for my journey with Parkinson's. Kia kaha, be brave, be strong, be you.